This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about FromSoftware developing multiple different projects, PlayStation's 30th anniversary release, the insane requirements for Indiana Jones, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 61. I am your host, the man who feels like he ate multiple wheels of cheese within Dark Souls 3, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man whose PC will run Indiana Jones at 240p if he can still get 60 FPS, Justin, better known as I Am Zaricon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, I had a great Thanksgiving. It was definitely a good time to be with my family. We had a great meal. We had a great time together. I mean, we went over to my sister's house a little later than we had planned, but we got there. They were still finishing cooking up, but my niece and nephew, they wanted me to play with them, so I definitely did that for a good while until it was time for dinner, and then, enjoyed time with that, and then after dinner and whatnot. Unfortunately, my sister, she had to go to bed early because she unfortunately had to work really early the following day, so we really didn't see too much of her after that. But we like I said, I spent the night over there, so following day, still was spending time with the family, and left later than originally intended, but still it was a good time there. Other than that, outside of that, stuff had been pretty much the same. Monday, though, the internet in my area went out. My ISP sent a message saying that the internet would be out for the area and that it would be fixed the next day. Fortunately, though, it was fixed later that day. The only downside was the fact that I was working from home that day, so I had to work with a hotspot, which thankfully, at least, no one was trying to do something like video chat with me, which really would have been a problem due to the limited bandwidth. But other than that, that was good. And I guess one last thing I'll mention is that so we received a message from a work notification saying that that everyone sort of needed to be out of the office today by 7 p.m. because there was going to be a lot of security updates going on, and because of that, none of our key cards would be working after that point, so we would essentially be locked in the building. And that was fine and dandy, except I was working the late shift today, and I was having problems with some stuff at work, and I was really pushing it close to that 7 p.m. deadline. I mean, fortunately, I got out just in time, but I was definitely a little nervous on that end. But other than that, though, everything's going well.
Good to hear. Let me think here. Okay, so Thanksgiving ended up being busier than I was hoping it would be. Took longer to get through a lot of the cooking stuff, and then I didn't even have time to work on the podcast until the evening because I just had too much to do with the cooking. Like, originally I was going to try and get the podcast edited in the morning and then do all the cooking after that. But the main thing is I was just kind of antsy in the morning. It's like, okay, I knew that I still needed to get stuff done for the dinner since I was prepping the majority of the food, or at least, a lot of the main stuff. So I ended up just having to spend a lot of time on that, and some things that I definitely came to realize. So one of the things I mentioned previously that I was making homemade cream and mushroom soup for the green bean casserole, and I thought, okay, well, my blender has a chop function that theoretically as long as I don't do it for too long, I might be able to chop the mushrooms down to where I don't have to cut them up into little pieces myself. But it ended up chopping them way too finely, and so then it just kind of made the texture more chunky, but not in, like, a good way, because it was, like, little tiny pieces. And so I ended up doing, like, half of them in the blender before I decided to do the rest of them by hand. So that ended up affecting the texture. I mean, it still tasted really good. Like, flavor was great, but it just... texture was weird. So, of course, I was also I had to make it dairy-free because of my sister and her kids. So, using oat milk, it's a lot thinner than regular milk, and it doesn't emulsify quite as well. So, it took a bit more to get it going. I mean, like I said, it still turned out taste-wise. It was great. It just was a little wonky in terms of the texture of it. Then I found out another mistake that I definitely don't want to repeat in the future, and that is with the potatoes I did for making mashed potatoes. So I like using potato ricer because it typically gives like a very even consistency in terms of how the potatoes come out. But the mistake I made was I cooked them, I boiled them a few days prior, and then on Thanksgiving, I actually did the potato ricing thing, and that definitely affected the texture. It was not nearly as smooth as it should have been, and so I kept adding liquid to it, trying to get it smooth. And when I finally got it smooth, it seemed like it was good. But then after it had some time to heat up, it turns out I added too much liquid, and so it was just more soupy. I mean, they still taste good, but it was just not the texture I was looking for, and it was kind of lumpy almost. I mean, it's hard to explain exactly, but it just definitely was not as smooth as it normally is. So that was another mistake I made. Third mistake I made was one of the bigger ones. I mean, it still worked out fine, but smoking the turkey. So because I only smoke a turkey once a year, I can never remember how long it actually takes to cook, and it seems like it almost always takes either way less time than I expected to or way more time than I expected to. And so I started it around, I think it was 11:30, with the idea that we'd probably be eating somewhere between 4 and 5. And I thought, based on the probe thermometers I had, that it was ready around 5 o'clock. Turns out it wasn't quite ready, and so I started carving into it and found that the breast was still pink. And so I stuck it back in for a bit at a higher temperature, thinking once again, because of what the thermometer said, that it was done, but it really still wasn't done. And so what I ended up doing instead was I just stuck the whole thing in the oven at a high temperature and just cooked it for a bit longer, basically just until like the breast was cooked, and then once it was cooked, I was able to slice it up and use that. But as a result, it just didn't end up quite as, I guess you could say, perfect. It just didn't end up quite the way that I wanted it to. So it was a mistake I made. I mean, it still worked out. The turkey still tasted great. It still got smoked. It just didn't get fully cooked in the smoker. So I'm just going to have to make sure next year, or the next time I do a turkey anyway, that I start it early. Because worst case scenario, we have to warm it up a little bit. And that's really not that big of a deal. So I'll keep that in mind for next year. But otherwise, it's been pretty standard. Did our second week of leading music and have a little bit of time off. And apart from that, nothing out of the ordinary. Work is a little slow right now, but that's just kind of it's mostly just the time of year. I mean, right now I'm trying to wrap up everything that I need to get done in terms of my KPIs, my key performance indicators, before the end of the year. And since I'm only working until the 18th is my last day, and then I'm off for the rest of December after that, I have less time to get it done. So most of the stuff I need to get done is basically done. It's just some things that, because I'm dependent so much on other people, I haven't quite completed them. So it is what it is. On a completely different note, You know how before I had been having issues with my headphones? I
Yeah,
finally
yeah.
figured out what the problem was. It was the extension cord, the extension cable that I had for the headphones. Because, like, when I
Okay.
plug in my headphones directly to my computer or to my work laptop or whatever, I don't have any problems. I plug them into my Steam Deck, no problems. But then I was just having problems with the left side whenever, or actually, no, the right side whenever I was plugging into using the extension cable I had, which is unfortunate because it's a nice braided cable and it's not that old. I haven't had it super long. But like the default, the braided cable that I bought for these headphones some years ago, I've had longer and it hasn't had any problems. It's just short, so it doesn't quite reach all the way to my PC very easily, and so it's kind of wonky from that standpoint. But I went ahead and just got a new extension cable this time. I got one that's coiled, so that it's shorter, but it stretches, so works out pretty well so far. Haven't had any problems with it. But yeah, I feel like there was something else, but I don't remember what it was. I'm still trying to figure out the best positioning for my microphone and settings, and I'm using the pop filter again this week because last week my P's were definitely popping a lot more than I wanted them to, and it's just kind of a still trying to figure out this new setup. So yeah, that's it.
That's always sort of like a nice, I guess you could say, problem. It's always a nice problem, I guess
Well,
you could say,
yeah,
to
yeah,
have.
yeah, it is. That's true. But yeah. All right. What have you been playing this past week?
So while I was over at my sister's house, I brought my Steam Deck with me, and I don't remember how we got into this subject, but my niece and nephew brought up Super Mario Brothers, and so I said, "Well, would you like to play Super Mario Brothers?" And so we ended up playing Super Mario Brothers 3. This is the sort of remake, or I guess enhanced version, because honestly, when I first played Super Mario 3, I didn't even realize it was an NES title. I played the SNES version from the All Stars one, but played Super Mario Bros. 3. They I let them play it because it has the Mario Luigi where you can switch out between two players. And I was sort of like showing them how to play the game, and I wasn't really expecting them to do too much since they're only 4 and haven't really played too many games. Now they sort of start to understand how the mechanics work as far as like with moving and jumping, but just like sort of also not knowing how to jump and move at the same time was something they were sort of struggling with. And after a while, they sort of asked me for help, and then eventually just led to me just playing the game entirely. And then they were just like, they enjoyed watching it though. And it was funny though because after I cleared the first, or when I was reaching the end of the first world, they thought the game was almost over. And I was like, no, I said no, that's just the first world. Still have 7 more worlds to go through. But I mean, hey, when you're that young, you probably think, yeah, the game's almost over. We're at the castle. But honestly, though, going back to that, Super Mario 3 is a very good game. And honestly, I'm really torn between whether this or Super Mario World is the better 2D Mario game. But it's just such a good game, and I really enjoyed going back and playing that again because it is phenomenal. But also, next thing I played was some more God Eater Resurrection. Haven't played that in a while, but a friend of mine wants to get back into that, and so as usual, we were having problems with trying to remember the controls. But fortunately, it didn't take us as long as it normally does, and additionally, I finally caught up to where my friend was in the story, so we were pretty much now on even ground as far as progress goes. Also, I was figuring out, or at least I was learning about how to actually use different, or how to make the best out of my weapons, so that way they're more tuned in as far as like what monsters are weak. So that definitely had an impact on the type of progress we're making. I also will say that we handled a lot of the harder quests before we actually did the story quests, which sort of made things easier because the side quests are, or at least have been, much harder than the main story quests. So that sort of prepped us up on that end. But moving on, also, the group I was in, we played some more Factorio. This time around, I sort of did more work than I normally do, mostly because of the fact that I was doing some of the work that I previously did when I was playing Factorio a long time ago, and that was just be sort of the defense captain, you might say, which was just making sure no bugs were attacking our factory and whatnot. So like initially I was just, they said, hey, Justin, could you just just build us a perimeter, so I was like, all right, cool, I'll just go, build a nice good wall and we'll be good to go. And then eventually we went out on the offense and we're attacking nests directly, which we weren't completely prepared for, just because of the fact that we really ran out of ammo a lot, and we had to also, we almost, like, our shields almost went down and we were almost wiped out, and that actually did happen twice to a couple of us. But we eventually were able to wipe out the nests and just expand our resources, so that definitely was good on that end. And I'm not certain how far they went on without me, but they did a little bit more after that. Then I played some Lego Marvel Superheroes, and this is primarily, I was just playing this because I wanted to get some footage for some stuff, but honestly, it definitely is a pretty solid standard Lego game, but with just the Lego Marvel aspects. One thing I will appreciate as far as some of the background stuff I've noticed in the game is just some Marvel references that I thought were pretty neat, pretty nice, and good to see. But yeah, not really too much to say about that. But lastly, I return once again to Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix. And this past weekend has been a victory lap for me on many aspects. So the 5 organization members that I could not beat before, I finally beat them. And it took me quite a bit. And I'll admit, I actually kind of grinded to get some extra defense boosts and a couple of offense boosts, just because I was very frustrated with how I came close several times to beating the members and got wiped out. And it really frustrated me, especially with like Axel, because you can't beat him unless you clear the floor of fire. If you don't clear it, you can't beat him. Even if you attack him right as he's at 1 HP, he just won't die. And twice what happened was I had him down, and I kept trying to get him to do his attack where I could use a reaction to clear the floor, but it didn't work. And then eventually I got it to work, and I was like, finally, I'm done. I'm done with you. But definitely that was good. Now, I went back to the Lingering Will, and I don't know when this will pop up, but I really got tired of his shenanigans. So what I did was I was looking up a guide to figure out like what's the best strategy to do, because he just kept walloping me, and he kept getting me into stun locks and wiping me out effectively. And then I saw there was a strategy called the Fenrir plus negative combo strategy, which is essentially you hit him one time, he staggers, and if you jump and attack him repeatedly, he's in a stun loop where you just keep attacking him, and eventually you will beat him. Now, on one hand, this is kind of easier said than done, because first you have to get him into a position where you can actually hit him. Because multiple times when I started the fight against him, he immediately would combo me and wipe me out, which was frustrating to say the least. And then when I finally was able to get him into it, it was so satisfying. The fact that when I finally got to work, I beat him, and I was like, you know what? I don't even care that I'm technically cheating, because if this boss can stun lock me at the start of the fight and wipe me out, I don't feel any remorse for stun locking him and beating him. So that definitely felt very satisfying. Now, the first time I beat him, I actually didn't record it, so I had to go back and go through the fight all over again to actually record how it went. And that actually took me multiple tries because of the fact that, again, he would attack me first, and I had a hard time to actually get him into the loop of being able to hit him. And a couple of times actually, when I was doing my repeat of that fight, there were cases where I actually would hit him farther away than I wanted to, and because of that, he would recover and then just start attacking me again and would beat me. So it definitely took me much longer than I wanted to record this over again. So after that, then that was it for the bosses. Actually, no, I have that wrong. I actually beat him before I beat Xemnas, and then I finished all the bosses. But after that, though, the only thing left for the game as far as achievements go was just to get all of the gummy routes completed, as well as getting all the blueprints for the gummy ships, which was a pain initially until I read a strategy that said the best way to handle that is just to make a donut ship. So that way enemies, they attack your center of mass, but because you're a donut, you have no center technically. So the shots will go right through you. And that really helped with the exception of one map area. But other than that, though, that really helped me, and I was able to get through all of the different paths completed. So I am now officially done with the Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix, and I would say I'm going to take a break from Kingdom Hearts, but technically there's only one game left in the 1.5 plus 2.5 collection, so I feel like I should just go ahead and finish it out by playing Birth by Sleep. But yeah, that definitely was a trial there, but I enjoyed it though. That's definitely a good game. But with that's everything.
Great. Yeah, I'm really happy that you were able to get through Kingdom Hearts 2, especially fighting the, what was it called? The
Lingering Will.
Lingering Will, yes. Yeah. And seeing that strategy, I'm glad that there was a cheese strategy, and sometimes that's what you got to do, is cheese it. And it's so frustrating when you're stuck. I mean, when you feel like that's your only option. But there comes a certain point when it's just like, I've been trying this over and over legitimately, and now it's time to just cheese away. So, but yeah, good stuff. Speaking of cheesing away, so, I mean, there's actually been 3 games I played this week, but only one of them I actually did any cheesing. So, obviously, the main thing is Dark Souls 3. I will get to that. Actually, you know what? I'll do them in order of how I played them. So, started with Dark Souls 3. I'm not going to have... I don't have clips for all of these because some of them I thought I recorded, but I didn't actually record. But this is one situation where the ones that I didn't record, I'm honestly not that disappointed that I didn't get them, because they were either ones where it was just like, okay, this is an obvious way to win the fight, or it was a situation where it wasn't something where like it was like anything special, I guess you could say. So, but after we talked last week, I did go and fight Yorm the giant, and I of course took that special sword. So the way that it works, it's partially accurate for what you said, but it's not 100%. So you charge up the, whatever the name of that sword is, the Storm Sword or whatever it's called. Storm Ruler, that's what it's called. So you charge that up, and then you press R2 in order to do the long range attack. That does like almost 6,000 damage to him for one hit. And does drop him to his knees initially. However, you can't, at least from what I could tell, you can't actually do like a strong attack on him, or you can't like walk up to him and then hit him hard like you would normally when they're on their knees. So you basically just have to keep using that charging attack. The problem is, because of how long it takes to charge, if you're not, I mean, basically apart from like the first time when he actually falls to his knees, most of the times you have to get away from him a bit in order to charge it again, because it takes a little bit to charge before you can actually use it. But each time you use it, it does like 6,000 damage, and takes about, I think it was 4 or 5 hits total to kill him. It did take me several tries to get through that, just because of the fact that it's hard to get the time to charge it up. That's really what it comes down to. So, but I did beat him. Unfortunately, I don't have the footage recorded. I did record at least one of the attempts once I started doing that. So at least you'll see, you know, what it looks like. It's just, of course, that I didn't manage to actually record the winning attempt. But then moving on, I went into on Orlando. Yeah, because I had like just started to move in that direction, and you know, deal with the Silver Knights, of course. I guess I was kind of wrong last week. Last week I said that the Silver Knights don't respawn and the Black Knights do, or the other way around. No, I can't remember. Yeah, I said the Black Knights respawn and the Silver Knights don't. So it's like there's one area where the Silver Knights don't respawn, and then the rest of the time they respawn. The Black Knights, it seems like they just respawn, period. So I don't know. It's weird. It's like that's just the way that Miyazaki does things, and so it is whatever. It is what it is. Thankfully, the archers were nowhere near as bad to deal with this time around, because there was enough obstacles to where it was easier to avoid them, like getting up to the where the elevator is to get into On Orlando. You can walk along the right side of those slanted roofs, I don't know what you would call them, buttresses or something. So you can walk along the side of them, and it's possible to avoid the archers. And I basically just abused Toxic Mist. So that was how I took most of them out. And as much as possible, like, I would use it. I mean, if I had the option, I'd do it, you know, through environmental obstacles. Like the very first archer that you come upon, it's pretty easy to just do the poison mist through, or the toxic mist through the pillar that he's standing in front of, and then he doesn't even come after you because he doesn't see you. As long as he doesn't see you, as long as they don't see you, typically they will not come after you. So it's like, he wasn't too bad to deal with. The second one was a little more tricky because he would see you, but it was possible to avoid him enough to where could avoid getting killed. Then there's like a third one, pretty easy to get him through one of the pillars, and then he doesn't come after you. But then there's one that that's around a corner, and that one is a lot harder to get to easily, especially because of how long it takes to use the Toxic Mist. And so it just ends up being kind of tricky. It was basically, I figured out the way that was easiest to do it was try to get over there, breathe the Toxic Mist, run back, and then kind of hide behind a pillar so that you're just far enough away to where he doesn't come after you with his sword and shield, or spear, or whatever that one uses. And then he just keeps trying to fire his giant arrows at you, and you're protected by the pillar and stuff, and he just dies from the Toxic Mist. And anyway, all that being said, I got through that area, was able to I mean, it took quite a few tries. I ended up dying quite a number of times, but it was nowhere near as bad as in the original On Orlando with the archers there. Mostly because that area is significantly smaller than the original On Orlando was. A lot more simplified. You basically just have like the main hall, and really that's it, because most of the side stuff is completely gone now. But that being said, I initially went into the fight against Aldrich. So you can you can be summoned to help fight Aldrich with Cirrus. No, not Cirrus. With Henri. Cirrus is a different fight that you do. And it's just like a summoning symbol, like right in front of the main doors to the main hall. You can do it there. And so like initially I went in there and I'm like, oh, I guess I'm fighting Aldrich this way. I don't have to fight her later. And, you know, several tries, and I mean, it was probably like 10 tries. And then, we took down Aldrich. Then I actually get inside, see the corpse of the giant blacksmith, and, get inside the main hall and deal with the enemies there. And then I get to the actual fight against Aldrich. And it's definitely more challenging solo, but it still wasn't terrible. Like, it was hard. I mean, it still took me quite a few tries, but it wasn't like one of them where I got super frustrated. At least up to this point, I had not really hit a wall. Like, definitely had some challenges, but I hadn't really hit any walls. So I got through that, and then I got teleported to the dancer. Now, thankfully, initially, when I started the fight unintentionally, I just used a homeward bone to get out because of the fact that I wanted to make sure I actually was able to use my souls, because I knew I was gonna probably die right away. Then I go back and try to fight it. This was a wall for a while. It was one of the most frustrating fights I've done in this game, and probably the second most frustrating. I'll get to the first. So this one, I tried so many times. At best, I was getting it down a little more than halfway. But like I tried some different strategies. I was, doing a decent job dodging for the most part, but I just get hit enough and get killed. And get killed. And get killed. And killed. And killed. And killed. And killed. And I mean, I spent a bunch of time doing this. I think it was probably Saturday. And I just was getting so sick of this stupid fight. And I looked up a cheese strategy, which was just basically utilizing a glitch. And initially I couldn't get the glitch to work. But then I watched like an updated video from that same person that explained it a little more clearly in a couple spots that I didn't quite understand on the initial viewing of the video, and was able to glitch and just stand in the door and use arrows until that stupid thing was dead. I cheesed it, and I am not ashamed. That is one fight where like I don't have any regrets, because I really tried. I tried and tried and tried. Now, if I had been in a position where I didn't have a choice and there was no cheese, I probably would have eventually gotten it, but man, it also could have been one of those that could have just made me quit the game. It was that frustrating to me. And I mean, like, I tried a lot of different strategies, just nothing really worked for me. Honestly, the thing that got me the most with that fight was that grab. Getting grabbed and then instant one-hit kill. It's just like, oh, well, that sucks. And I mean, even when I got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm being more careful, I'm keeping my distance, waiting to attack until after she's done doing the grabbing animation, and, finding openings here and there, doing pretty decent, but it's just, there would be one mistake or another, and it was usually, I don't know, I hated that fight. It sucked. So I moved on from there, started going into Aldrich Castle. So initially, minor frustrations here and there, just, enemies ganging up on me, so on and so forth. Just the usual stuff. I get to Dragon Slayer armor. And this one was definitely hard. And I probably should have given it more attempts than I did. Especially because, like, the last, I think, couple times I tried to do the fight, I just used pyromancy. So I was just, trying to avoid throwing a Great Chaos Fireball, which uses up a lot of FP, but, I just did it while I could, did it for a while. If I had stuck with it, I probably could have beaten it completely legitimate, but I came across a cheese strategy and I used it. That one I'm a little more like, I probably should have given it more tries before I cheesed it, but I was so just over it after the dancer that I took advantage of that cheese strategy because it worked and it was easy to do. So the way this strategy works, you have to be embered for the strategy to work, and you go up to the door, and then before you enter, you try to invade somebody else's world. So you just use your invasion item, and then once it tells you that it's starting to invade the world, then you go through the fog gate, and then it will teleport you immediately to somebody else's world. Now, because you are already going through the fog gate, normally what it will do is it will teleport you back to your world, but the boss will have already been activated, and you will be outside the fog gate door. Now, if it doesn't teleport you back automatically, you can just, from the invaded world, you can just use the black stone item, whatever it's called, and then it'll teleport you back, and it works the same. So the boss will be hanging out right by the fog gate, and you can't use arrows or anything, but you can use pyromancy or any spells or anything with like AoE effects, and that's what I did. It still took quite a while to get through the fight, but I did get that recorded, and as well as the cheese on the dancer, and yeah. That one, I'm a little disappointed in myself for giving up so early, because it wasn't even necessarily like I was super frustrated with the fight, because I really didn't attempt it that many times. It was just, I was just not in the mood to struggle through it, and I knew that it was going to be a hard fight. I knew that it was one of the harder fights. But yeah, I took advantage of that cheese, and I beat it. But then, that's when I get to Lothric and Lorien. This was my wall. Very, very much so. So I go into the fight initially. I die like in one hit. And it's just because I only had I had sort of seen someone do the fight one time, but I wasn't really prepared for it. I was trying to dodge. I was not having any success dodging. So I go back in with the Dragon Slayer's Great Shield, whatever it's called. The one you get from Dragon Slayer armor. Because this thing is, it's a massive shield. It's really heavy, but it also does a great job blocking damage and doesn't typically use up a whole lot of stamina. So I was going in with this shield, and then I would just attack them as I could. And for the most part, the strategy was working. It was easy enough. I could block, and then it was just figuring out when I could stop blocking so that I could regenerate my stamina a bit and that sort of thing. But when I wasn't actually getting hit, when they were just hitting my shield, it wasn't doing much damage. It's just anytime that they hit me, usually when I was not blocking because I was attacking, that it would do a lot more damage. But then the other thing that killed me probably, I would say probably about at least 50% of my deaths were from that beam attack, where they teleport off to some other part of the room, and the main issue was if I didn't happen to find them quickly enough, and then they got the attack off, and then I wasn't able to dodge it, and so then I died. But then the other half of the time that I died from that, it was because even though I found them, I dodged too early, and so then I ended up getting hit by it. Then probably about 30% of my deaths were from... Well, it probably wasn't quite 30%. It was probably more like 15% of my deaths were specifically from that one where they teleport and stab down. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of my deaths were just random other ways that I died. So I have no idea how many times I attempted this fight. It was a lot. And like the shield was working. I started getting better at dodging the beam attack. As long as I could find him, usually I could dodge it. I mean, there's still plenty of times where I dodged too early and then got hit. But as long as I dodged late enough, it was easy to avoid. But it was still just like, it was frustrating. Most of the time, I couldn't even get to phase 2. And thankfully, I knew going into the fight that there was a phase 2. So like that part didn't surprise me at all. I knew that was coming. And I knew that if you didn't attack the younger brother or older brother, however it works, the one that the backpack. If you didn't attack the backpack, then he revives the other brother if you kill him again. I didn't even encounter that, but because the reality is that even when I got to phase 2, I never got far into it. Like, I would be doing okay initially, but then usually I just get hit by the backpack's magic attacks. And I think I may have gotten to phase 2 like 5 or 6 times. And so I'm just like so frustrated. I'm so sick of this fight. For me, this was basically the new Ornstein and Smough for me, except that it was even worse in some ways. Well, because like Ornstein and Smough, I felt like more than anything, it was just my reflexes that were the problem. And of course, obviously Ornstein was really cheap with sometimes him having to like go around pillars and stuff with his charging spear attack, and sometimes having attacks go through Smough and stuff like that. But anyway, this one was just like, I was just messing up too much, and I think that the strategy could have been good if I had better figured out the right openings for attacks. Because sometimes I'd be able to get off 2-3 hits in a row, and I'm using Zweihander still, of course. Even though I have tried a bunch of other weapons, it's just Zweihander is still the best one in terms of overall damage output plus weight for that damage output and so on and so forth. But anyway, I'm spending a bunch of time on this fight. I'm getting way too frustrated, and I just decided at that point to put the game down for a bit. I wasn't getting anywhere with it. I did see that there was a glitch that could be used for phase 2, and I tried to execute it, and I did not successfully do it. I just couldn't, like, even if I could get, like, I'd get to phase 2, and the boss would immediately turn around and start attacking me. And it's like, so I stepped away. I decided I wanted to play something completely different. So I went ahead and installed Superliminal, which is a puzzle game, in which basically it's dealing with, you move objects in the environment, and depending on the perspective that you see them from, it changes the size of those objects. So like, for example, you'll see like a chess piece, and it'll be this little tiny chess piece on the ground. You pick it up, and then you hold it close to your face, and it looks a lot bigger. So then you drop it, and it's as big as it looks in your sight. You can like hold, if you back up holding, if you hold it up and then you like back up so that it looks like it's really tall on the back wall, and then you drop it, and it's that big. It's as big as the wall, as the back wall. So anyway, it's stuff like that. You're dealing a lot with perspective. This is a game that I had been interested in for a long time, and I bought, I don't know, probably on a Steam sale or through Instant Gaming some time ago, but I just hadn't gotten to it. But I decided to go ahead and play this, and it's not a long game. I think it took me about 2.5 hours to complete. And that's not with like all achievements or anything. There's still quite a few that I could do if I so desire. And even the amount of time it took me was really just because there was a couple spots where I got stuck that I was just overthinking things for sure. But yeah, so I played all the way through that, and pretty good game. I haven't fully decided if it's something that I would like. It's definitely not like on the same tier as like Portal or anything like that, but it was still interesting, and I thought it was a pretty good game. But yeah, so I played through that, and then randomly I also decided to install Zone of the Enders Second Runner Mars, which is a Kojima game, a Kojima mech anime game. So it's like you got you fly around in mechs and you have mech combat, and then it has like a mixture of 3D and anime cutscenes. So like the robots are all in 3D, and it's like a PS2 level in terms of the visuals. And then when you're like inside the cockpit and everything, the characters are anime. So I didn't play a lot of it. I basically just played a little bit past the very first boss you face. But what I will say about it, the combat in this game is fantastic. Like, this is what I wanted out of Daemon X Machina. At least, well, just based on the original demo Daemon X Machina that I played. Because when I played that demo, I was not impressed with it, and it really wasn't what I was looking for. Like, mostly just because the guns in that original demo felt so weak. It felt like I was firing a pea shooter. But no, this one, it was just like, the way the combat felt was just really good. Like, really, really good. And I definitely want to play more. But I think I want to try and see about emulating the HD collection from PS3, because there's only a PC version of this game, and it's like the third in the series, technically the fourth if you count the Game Boy Advance game that was also like just a side thing. And so yeah, I think I need to try and get a hold of that. I don't know. I mean, I would imagine it probably emulates just fine on Steam Deck. But yeah, what I played of it, I really like the combat. There will be clips of that, particularly the boss fight that I did in that. Yeah, it was pretty cool. But of course, throughout all this, I'm still just feeling like antsy because I want to get back to Dark Souls, because I didn't like leaving it just stuck there. So I went back in, tried that Prince's fight again, and still wasn't really making any progress. But I remembered, there's some stuff in the checklist that I had been using that I hadn't done yet. Some stuff I had skipped over because basically there got to a certain point where I stopped following the checklist and I just explored and did it, entirely on my own without worrying about what was on the checklist. So I went back to the checklist and found some of the stuff that I had forgotten about, or that I hadn't gotten, like in Smoldering Lake and Irithyll Dungeon and Profane Capital. And then I found that there was a couple of, well, there's quite a few optional bosses that I hadn't fought yet, areas that I hadn't been to yet. So I went to the King's Garden. No, I don't think that's what it's called.
Ooh, yeah.
But it's where you fight Osiris, or however it's pronounced. The weird dragon king with the invisible baby. And I fought him. I think it probably took me 3 tries. First time I went in completely blind, or basically blind. Like, I didn't actually know what I was doing. I knew what the boss looked like, and that was about it. Didn't survive. Second time I went in less blind, but didn't survive. And then third time I went in, I used the one summon that was available close by. And yeah, it wasn't too bad of a fight. With the summon helping me out, that definitely helped a lot. Got his attention off of me some more. I mean, I was doing a good amount of damage. 'cause I think I've been pretty well over leveled most of the time. And of course, I was coming in pretty late. But after going through this, I go into the... I can't remember the name of the area. It's Untented Graves. And get to the Champion Gunder. And definitely, obviously not as easy as the original version of the boss that you fight in the beginning of the game. Of course, he also doesn't transform or anything. He just gets more aggressive. But took me quite a few tries to get through that. I think initially I was trying to use melee and it wasn't really working well for me. I knew he was resistant to toxic, but it did work. So, I made sure to get him toxified as much as possible. I'm pretty sure in the end I did end up using a summon to help me get through the fight. I mean, it was, of course, like the game's default summon, which was Swordmaster, I believe. And really, more than anything, it was intended to keep him off my back. So, got him toxic, and then, just used my pyromancy to take him down. And that, thankfully, it still did a lot of damage to him. I was doing, I think, around like 800 some odd damage for each one that hit. So it was a good amount of damage. Still pretty difficult, but not anywhere near, in terms of all the difficult fights that I've had to deal with. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Got through it. Continued on to the next area. Cheesed all of the Black Knights with Toxic because I discovered that they will not follow you back into back to the bonfire. Like once you get up to that door, they won't follow you past that. So you can just use Toxic and cheese them that way. Oh, you can do that. You can do that in on Orlando as well, which is great. On the Silver Knights there that are right by the entrance to the main hall, you can lure them just to the bridge, and they won't go onto the bridge, and so then you can just poison them and then stand back and watch them try to hit you, but they won't go past a certain point. So it's like, hey, that works. Let's see here. Looking at, I did go into the Archdragon something or other. Archdragon Peak, I think is the name of the place.
Yeah.
And I went into the Ancient Wyvern fight. Wyvern, however you pronounce it. So I know that the supposedly easy way to beat him is to do a plunge attack. The problem is, of course, you have to get through all of those lizard people on the way up there. And I think probably my first or second attempt going through there, I managed to actually get up there. I wasn't even trying to attack all the guys. I was just running through as best as I could, got up the ladder, got to the plunging spot, went off to try to plunge, and the plunge attack didn't activate, and I just crashed on the ground and died. Unfortunately, I didn't get that recorded. I thought I did, but I looked through my footage and I don't have it. So, but anyway, so yeah, that was like, it sucked. And then after that, most of the times I didn't even make it to the ladder. The couple times I did make it to the ladder, I would almost get hook-shotted. Almost always get hook-shotted by that axe-wielding guy with the axe hook shot. Or the chain axe, whatever you want to call it. You swing it, grab me on my back, and pull me off the ladder, and I die instantly. And it's just like, So, after a number of attempts, and just nothing really quite doing the trick, because, I even tried at one point just killing everything as I went along, and it was working okay for a bit, but then I got it to a point where there was just too many enemies, and ended up dying from them, and after a bunch of attempts, I finally just decided, okay, I know of a spot where I can very easily just shoot arrows at this stupid dragon. And that's what I ended up doing to kill him. It took me 12 minutes to get through that fight because of how long it took to get the arrows, because it's short, pretty much right after you cross the bridge, after you first see him. there's like a small building where you get a bunch of those lizard guys, and he'll breathe fire in there and kill them off. But right around the corner on either side, or at least on the left side when you're walking up to it, that's basically a safe spot where you can shoot from. I mean, you still kind of have to move out, shoot a couple arrows, then back up against the wall in order to avoid getting destroyed by fire. But yeah, that one I'm not really ashamed of. I'm not ashamed of it because I don't really think of it as a cheese. Technically, that's the harder fight because, well, let me put it this way. I know that it can be an easy fight if you can get the plunging attack. It could very well even be a one-hit kill from what it sounds like. But the problem is getting up there to do the plunging attack. That is the hard part of that stupid fight. And the arrows, as tedious as it was, and as much as I wanted to give up on the arrows, I was also after a bunch of tries, I just decided, okay, this isn't worth it. I'm just going to deal with it. I'll just slowly chip away at his health until he's dead. Then I can go cash in my souls and then go back through the area and take out all the guys and get all the items and so on. But yeah, so I completed that and I started in the next portion of it and didn't go super far. I went a little ways into it before I decided I was going to go back and try Lothric and Lorien again. So this time I decided, just based on a video I had seen where they were explaining the cheese again. For one, they did a good job explaining that when you get to that second phase, assuming you get the glitch to work correctly, you don't move at all, because if you move, he will move and then he'll attack you and then you're screwed. But if you do move, if you don't move, then he'll stay still and you can just fire at the brother from behind with arrows and until he dies. So the first part of the phase, I just did pyromancy the whole time. And I discovered something from watching this video that I kind of wish I had done this earlier or had thought of it earlier. But for one, I was determined to stick with my strategy of the shield and the sword because the shield was doing a really good job blocking the damage. But also, I just wasn't really thinking about the fact that I could just focus on being far away instead of being up close. Because, yeah, I had to be closer if I wanted to attack him with a sword. But if I was using pyromancy, I could back up quite a bit, and then it was much easier. I think, honestly, one of the biggest issues that kept coming up for me was the very first teleport when he comes, because he would always teleport from the back of the room by the altar to the front of the room where you were standing. And it never occurred to me until this time, I should just run forward as soon as I get in, and then he'll be further away from me and he'll be less likely to hit me. So go in, and I think it still took me probably 2 or 3 tries using this method. But once I finally got him to phase 2 using pyromancy, there he was, sitting there, not moving. I didn't move either. I just pulled out my bow. Chip, 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 chip. And just keep doing it until the backpack died. I did it until he was down to where one hit would kill him. And then just out of spite, I pulled out my Zweihander, two-handed, the strongest pancake slam that I could muster, and took him out that way. And even though I'm a little disappointed with myself in that I didn't figure out doing the dodges from further away a lot earlier, and that I didn't even attempt to do phase 2 with this new strategy, I also am just glad it's done. So yeah, that has been my Dark Souls 3 journey. I know that I still have a handful of bosses, not even counting the DLC ones. I think I'm at the point where technically I could go to the Kiln of the First Flame. I believe all I have to do is just put down the soul or ashes or whatever on the final throne in the Firelink Shrine, and then it should be able to go to the last area. But obviously I want to do all the rest of the stuff that I have, because I have at least 3 or 4 bosses left. Probably more than that, because I know that there's at least 1, if not 2 more for this area, for the Archdragon Peak or whatever it's called. Because I know that, like, there's a fight against the king, Nameless King. Is that what it is? No, that's
correct.
Okay, so I know there's that. I can't remember if there's another fight besides that in that area, other than, just normal enemies and stuff. And then I know I have at least a few other fights. I'm not sure how many of the ones I've seen are specifically DLC bosses. Because I just recently watched a video where someone was doing a bunch of skeletons versus every boss in Dark Souls 3, and seeing how many of them could survive all the skeletons. And it was like, I think 15 of them the skeletons won, and 10 of them the bosses won. But anyway, so yeah, I don't know how many bosses I have left, but I got past this. I'm sure that there's going to be more difficult fights, but I don't know if any one of them are going to be quite as frustrating to me as the Dancer and the Brothers. I still think the Dancer's the worst of all of them. I mean, that one, obviously, that was the easier cheese because of the fact that I could do it from the very beginning of the fight instead of having to get to phase 2 before I could cheese. But yeah, and obviously Dragon Slayer armor, I didn't attempt it enough times to know how frustrating it would have been had I actually attempted it more times. So anyway, that's all I got.
Okay, so I was just trying to look up some stuff, just because it's very curious about what you were saying. Actually, you really, outside of the final boss, there are really only 2 bosses you have left as far as like the base game.
Right.
One is Nameless King, the other is the Old Demon King, but that's really it.
No, Old Demon King I already beat.
Okay,
that was the Smoldering Lake one.
I guess the achievement just didn't unlock on Steam then. Is that like popping up on the list here?
That's weird. Unless the Old Demon King isn't the one at Smoldering Lake. I could have.
That should be it.
I'm positive. I mean, I know for a fact I beat him. I have my footage that I beat him. I hope that it didn't just not pop. That would be rather frustrating. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't show all the achievements immediately. That would be annoying if I had to redo it just for that. I mean, of course, eventually I probably would replay anyway, but let's see here. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't show the achievement for that completed, which is really odd because I definitely beat him. I'll have to look and see if there's some trick to get it to pop when it doesn't pop. It's like I didn't even cheese him either. I beat him completely legit. So that is very, very bizarre. Huh. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know why it wouldn't have that one activated. But anyway, did you have anything else?
Yeah. One thing I will actually say is, unlike, I don't know if you already are aware of this or not, but unlike Dark Souls 1, after you beat the final boss, it won't kick you into New Game Plus. So if you feel like you have to beat everything before you go there, you don't have to worry about that, because you'll still be able to actually go around throughout the world, still go and explore, get whatever you want, or even if you choose to do so, jump right into the DLC, you don't have to worry about like immediately being thrown into New Game Plus as soon as the game is over. So that's something I just wanted to make sure you knew about that in case you were wondering about like, oh, I have to hurry up and like do everything before I get to the boss. Like, no, you don't have, you're not that pressed for time. I definitely will agree that the dancer sucks. And honestly, I think the thing that really was a problem for me when I was fighting her was just the fact that I couldn't really predict what type of move she was going to do, and that was depending on whether she was going to do a fast attack or a slower attack.
Right.
That's really what was the issue I had with her. And I mean, I tried to just like hide behind a bunch of pillars, which sort of worked until the second half of the fight where they're on fire and then touching them hurts you. But yeah, she was annoying, and I really don't like the fact that as soon as you finish whatever the final lord you're fighting is, depending on whichever path you're taking, once you're done with that final lord, then you get summoned to her fight, which is just like, you were smarter than I was though, because I didn't know that was going to happen. And so as soon as I finished my final lord, I got teleported and was thinking, oh man, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What do I do? What do I do? You immediately said, I'm just going to homeward bone out of here.
I've learned my lesson for enough times from making that mistake. Like, especially when I was playing Dark Souls on the Switch, and I beat the the meme boss, Pinwheel. When I beat Pinwheel, and then I immediately started going towards the Tomb of the Unknown Giant, or the Tomb, whatever it's called, and then I fell off and I lost those souls that I had, and at that point, those souls would have been really helpful to level up. Not that it would have fixed my garbage build, but it was just like, so I learned after that. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that if I have a bunch of souls, that I make use of them right away, even if I have to waste some of them, the extra ones, on just whatever, on arrows or something. I do want to say with that though, it was more like I got teleported. I started talking to the NPC, and then the fight was, the cutscene was starting. I was like, oh crap, there's a fight starting. And so I, went ahead and got out the homeward bone and teleported and was able to utilize my souls. But anyway.
Yeah, and I'm actually very surprised that she wasn't your wall and that Lothric and Lorien were, because I know I just felt like she seemed, at least in my experience, she was definitely, she wasn't my wall. My wall was Pontiff, but I understood the frustration, so I thought she was going to be like that issue. But yeah, Lothric and Lorien definitely. They definitely take a whole lot of getting used to, just because of the fact, like you said, the magic beam is probably one of the worst things, and especially the fact that also, at least, correct me if I'm wrong, but at least from what I remember, the magic beam can even go through the pillars.
Yep.
Yeah, so that definitely does not really give you a lot of options as far as like what you need to do,
right?
Really trying to like strategize what you're going to do on the fly, because of the fact that you're always going to be vulnerable no matter where you are.
Yeah.
Especially with that teleporting, because you might be halfway around the arena trying to like duck and cover from just the normal orbs that are fired at you. And then, they teleport, and as you said, dive bomb right on top of you.
Yep.
And dead. Yeah. Champion, he was very interesting because of the fact that, he was interesting as the fact that, like you said, he's just more aggressive, whereas a lot of times bosses will have a second phase, and then it's just, I'm just going to try harder, which was interesting. Now, when I first fought him, it was very difficult, but I miraculously was able to get through him without dying. But then when I tried to fight him again on the second time around, he was just relentlessly kicking my butt, and I was really trying to figure out, what did I do the first time that I'm not doing this time, because it just definitely wasn't making sense. But that's a very interesting strategy that you had, though. I didn't know about the fact that you could just lure the Black Knights that were there to an area and just slowly kill them, which I'm glad, because those guys are definitely annoying. And all the knights, are just annoying to me. But so definitely having a way to deal with them with as little stress as possible is always great to know in that regard. But yeah. Now I'm actually interested in that one game you said, Superliminal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely sounds interesting just because of the concept and having those sort of unique kinds of puzzle games. I think are always interesting to get into. So I'll definitely look into that one. That's definitely interesting. But yeah, I'll eventually. I think I have Zone of the Enders, but I think I'll check that out eventually. And I was not aware that Kojima worked on that game, so that's definitely interesting tidbit of information.
Yeah, for sure. That's the whole reason I even got it, because it was one of my fellow Kojima fanboys told me about that one, and I had no idea that it was Kojima made series until he told me. And then once I started playing, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely see Kojima in this. I mean, even using the same kind of text and that sort of thing that Kojima has used in other games.
Yeah, definitely good stuff.
But yeah, I think that if I were to fight the princes again, of course, simply knowing that I should have just been dodging backwards more often probably would have helped a lot. But at least with when it comes to the being able to attack with physical attacks, I just don't feel like I have a good enough handle on that, apart from dodging backwards. And, you know, of course, if I had realized from the beginning that I should just be running forward instead of trying to, you know, block his first attacks and everything, it probably would have saved me a lot of trouble. Not that I necessarily would have made the fight a lot easier, but it would have at least helped reduce frustration. What was I going to say about that, though? Oh, yeah, the beam attack. The Dragon Slayer armor shield, whatever it's called, actually can block that attack. I mean, it doesn't block it fully, but it reduces the damage significantly, because instead of it being a one-hit kill, it does, like, maybe half a health bar, at least on my character, you know, with, I think I have, like, at the time I had probably 19 vigor, something like that. So, decent amount of HP. But, I mean, like, right now, my character's at, I think, level 93. So, like, my damage output's good. It's just, you know, you still get enemies cheap shotting and all this other garbage. But, yeah. So, we'll see what happens with the rest of it. I don't expect to be done with it before next week, but we'll see how the weekend goes. I still need to record Red Dead Redemption stuff, which I'm hoping to get done this weekend. I don't think I'll have the comparison done necessarily, but I'll at least get the recording done. Well, God willing. I'm hoping Saturday I can just, like, since the kids normally get to watch their shows anyway, just say, hey kids, guess what? You get to watch your show. You get to each have an hour to watch shows, so that way you can be in the front room while I'm recording stuff in the kitchen. But, yeah. Anyway. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right, let's get into the news. So, I'm going to start off with FromSoftware, as we've been talking about Dark Souls and everything else quite a bit. FromSoftware is working on multiple projects across various genres. So, let's see here. Yeah, there's really not much to this. So, the president and CEO, Hidetaka Miyazaki, said in a media interview after Shadow of the Erdtree won the Grand Award at PlayStation Partner Awards 2024 Japan Asia. We have multiple projects in the works across a variety of genres. There are titles directed by me, as well as titles directed by those other than myself. In that regard, I think we'll be able to show you a new FromSoftware in a variety of ways, so please look forward to it. The one thing I do want to add to that is I saw a separate story, which I didn't send to you, more just I saw the headline, that they basically said that Elden Ring 2 is not in the works, and they don't know when that would happen. So that would be a project that's not currently being worked on, which makes sense considering they just launched Shadow of the Erdtree, and they've probably been working on other stuff in the meantime. So What are your thoughts?
This is definitely interesting. I mean, it's definitely interesting hearing that they're going to branch into other stuff, especially considering the fact that they're mainly known for essential. I mean, currently mainly known for essentially one thing and one type of thing alone. Granted, something I was just curious about. So I was looking at some of the back history of some of other games. Within the past maybe 5 or so years ago, they worked on this one sort of game series. I can't remember what it was, like a Monster Hunter game, but it was like a side story kind of game. Seems like it was only released in Japan,
Hmm.
and it was for the, I think, the Vita, and one title was for the Vita, and the other one was for the 3DS. And it was sort of like, I can't remember what genre it was, but I think it was like, I can't remember if it was like some sort of role playing game or if it was like, I can't remember what it was, but it wasn't like your typical sort of, Soulsborne type of game. So that definitely was interesting. And I mean, I know of course they've done other types of games like Armored Core, which
Right.
while the latest one kind of has some, I guess you could say, borrows some a little bit of Souls like elements that we know. The original ones definitely weren't that way. They were more just directly action based, which also is another thing. They made another game some years ago called Metal Wolf Chaos, which is like another mecha type of game, which, from what I can tell based on the gameplay I've seen, I mean, I have the game, but I haven't played it yet, is that it is less of a Armored Core type of game and sort of more of just an mission action based. I mean, Armored Core is mission based, especially the older ones, but this one definitely was different. So I am interested in seeing what types of other stuff they can do. And like one thing I kind of would like them to do, I don't think this is something they will return to, but considering the fact that they returned to Armored Core, I would like them to go back and maybe either continue or remake their Kingsfield games, considering the fact that those games were essentially the original Dark Souls that they
Hmm.
made. So so, considering the fact that was like the originator, I would just like to see that game either have them remake the original ones or just try to like do what they did with Armored Core and just make a new entry
Right.
completely. I would be very interested in that, especially, I mean, because of the fact that, for one thing, I feel like it would be very different, especially if you have this sort of Souls-like game, considering the fact that it's in first person, like how much more difficult that could possibly be because you can't see everything that's going on around you. I would find that very interesting to play. So I would like them to go back to that. As far as other genres they could go into, one game that I saw on the list was, it said it was an adventure game, but just based on the description, it sounded more like it was kind of like a horror game. Um, I would be interested in seeing something like that come back. I can't remember what the game was even called. Man, I wish I pulled that. I wish I wrote down the list of the games I saw, but that would be something I'm interested in. I mean, just for giggles, if they decide to say we're gonna make Bloodborne Kart, and make it like an official one that's like, probably just using the current Bloodborne assets and stuff like that, just for fun, I would be interested in seeing that come back, seeing them make that. That would be funny. But other than that, though, I'm not entirely certain what other types of games they would make. I really feel like it would be somewhat relative to what games they've put out within their history. So whether it's just, a Souls like, which I really expect to see more of, maybe an action based game like, I doubt they'll make something directly like this again, but they had a game that was on Xbox 360 called, uh, oh man, it was called something Blade. Uh, I mean, I know the game panned because it was not one of their best games, but if they have just like a simple action based game, that would be pretty cool to have. And again, also like with Metal Wolf Chaos, I mean, something like that is sort of maybe a mecha game, but isn't hardcore. They could do something like that, and I wouldn't mind if they made another Armored Core game as well. So I'm very interested in seeing what they have. I believe that From Software is at a point where they can, just put out decent games, and even if it's not the best game currently, it's still something that will be pretty satisfying. So I think I have a pretty healthy healthy anticipation of what they'll do.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely am curious to see what all is going to be coming. It would not surprise me in the least if they are bringing back Kingsfield. Though I think more likely than not, my guess would be that they would do a new game. Considering the fact that, they just Armored Core 6, and, Armored Core has been going since the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. And, Kingsfield, I think that was original PlayStation, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and of course I saw that there are some games on PS2 as well, some more Kingsfield games, so I'm curious about that, and I need to actually look into that. Like, I had heard of it, but I'd never played it, never seen any gameplay, so I need to just look that up, see what it looks like. Because I know that, like, the Moonlight Greatsword is in that one. It's going as far back as that, so that's something I'm definitely curious about, but I want to look into it. But yeah, I think that, at least just based on my random guesses, I'm going to guess that there is another Dark Souls being made. Probably have Dark Souls 4 coming. Who knows when, but it's probably something they're working on. Because, if they're working on a bunch of projects, there's no way they would not be working on another Dark Souls. They haven't... It's been 8 years, almost 9 years since the last Dark Souls came out. And, they know it will sell, without question, especially after Elden Ring. Elden Ring was what convinced me to give Dark Souls another chance. Well, to give it an actual chance, because before that, I'd only tried Demon Souls, and it turned me off very quickly. But because of Elden Ring, grabbing my interest, and then at the time not being able to play it portably because I didn't have my Steam Deck yet, that was what convinced me to give Dark Souls a try, and what made me get obsessed with the game. And now, Dark Souls 3. But yeah, I'd say very likely we'll see another Dark Souls. Kingsfield, it would make sense for them to make a new game. And then, potentially another Sekiro. Sekiro obviously was rated very, very highly. Won Game of the Year. Not that Game Awards really matters all that much, but it did win Game of the Year. They've already said they're not doing Elden Ring 2 right now, so it'll be a while before that, and that's really not surprising. But yeah, there's all sorts of different things they could do. I'm curious, and I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled. I hope that from the sounds of it, you're going to have some good variety in there, and it's not just going to be Souls-likes, which is good, because I think it's good to have some variety. I definitely want to see what else they have, but I will be watching out for sure, without question.
Indeed.
All right. That's all my thoughts. You got anything else?
Well, I will. I guess I'll put it like this. Just from what I've heard, based on the ending of the final DLC for Dark Souls 3, I don't know if we'll actually get a Dark Souls 4.
Fair
just
enough.
Because of the way it ended.
Okay. Fair enough.
Just because how it ends is like there's like unless something changed, there's like no way to actually continue it.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
I do feel like we would probably get something in that vein though.
Okay, good to know. Obviously I'm not there yet, so right now current plan is I'm going to do the rest of the main content, probably minus the final boss, and then do the DLC and then the final boss, because I kind of just want to wrap it up in a neat little bow. I did look it up though. It appears that this the Demon King achievement is glitched, and that one of the things people have said has worked to fix the problem is to take pyromancies out of your inventory, like put them in your storage box, and then take them back out, and apparently that fixes it. It makes it pop. I don't know. I'm gonna try it for sure because, I mean, like with where I'm at right now, I think it's actually not impossible for me to get all the achievements. Well, obviously it's not impossible. One thing I was wondering about is New Game Plus required for all the achievements?
Yes.
Oh, that's right, because of the additional ending or endings.
Well, not just that, but there are a couple spells that you need for getting all the spells or something like that, or the miracles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're only found in New Game Plus and or New Game Plus 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, then I probably will not be aiming for all the achievements, but we'll see. I'm not sure if I really want to do more than one New Game Plus, at least not right away. As it stands right now, I'm leaning more towards when I finish all the stuff in the base game and, the DLC, I probably won't be playing any Souls games for a while, or at least not like actual Souls games. I'd probably go back to like Jedi Survivor, but I think I just want to play something that's just completely different. Go back to like a turn-based RPG, or maybe even just play something that I haven't really been all that into before, like Triangle Strategy, something like that, or maybe grab one of the short RPGs I have, like Live Alive or however you pronounce it. Because I've had that one for a while and basically only played like maybe 10 minutes of it. And I've heard it's amazing and short, which are both good things, so. But yeah, okay. All right, let's go on into the next topic. You want to talk about these Indiana Jones requirements?
Okay, so some time ago, there was, just before the official announcement was made, there was talk that Indiana Jones would require 120 gigabytes of storage, in order to have it on there. However, the full requirements for the game have come out, and it's definitely interesting. In fact, now keep in mind, this is just for this is just for, like, I guess you could say, the base requirements. So let's start off with the minimum requirements. So it's an Intel Core i7 10700K or a Ryzen 5 3600. That sounds pretty good. 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's pretty sizable, but I feel like a lot of people have 16 gigs in their PCs these days. Here's for the graphics. An RTX 2600 Super 8GB model, or an Radeon RX 6800 8GB, or an Intel Arc A580. That's for the minimum requirements. The recommended ones require an Intel Core i7-12700K or a Ryzen 7 7700, 32 gigabytes of RAM. And these are the graphics that are required for the recommended, by the way. An RTX 3080 Ti, 12 gigabytes, or a Ryzen RX, an RX 7700 XT, 12 gigabytes. Again, that's just recommended settings. And then on the ultra settings, you have an i7 13900K or a Ryzen 7 7900X, or you still need 32 gigs of RAM. And then you need a RTX 4080 16GB model or an RX 7900 XT 20GB model. And then, like I said, these are just the standard stuff. Then you have the full ray tracing requirements, which essentially all of the stuff is the same except for the fact that with the graphics cards, they're all just Ryzen 4000 series cards. So for the minimum is a Ryzen, why do I keep saying that word? RTX 4070 12GB model for the minimum, an RTX 4080 16GB model for the recommended, and for Ultra, an RTX 4090 24 GB model. And also, I'll just mention one thing. It says that this is that an SSD is required, and from what it says, it target for each one. It says that it does target 60 FPS across the board for all the recommended specs. But here's the thing: ray tracing is required. It is a graphic preset, and you cannot disable it. It's on all across the board, even on the standard minimum. Now, I have a lot to say about this, but before I put my thoughts out there, I want to hear what you have to say.
What the crap is this? That's the first thing I have to say. So, the one thing I will, the one and only thing I will give them credit for is that at least with the, with the basic minimum recommended in Ultra, which is without full ray tracing, that is native resolution on those 1080p, 1440p, and then 4K. So that's native resolution for those requirements. So I will give them credit on that front, that they're not requiring upscaling to get those things. But that's where it ends. Okay, first of all, ray tracing should never, ever be required. And they say that it will not work without. I guarantee you, probably within the first day, that there's going to be a mod to remove ray tracing, and it's going to make performance shoot way up. People are going to be getting 120 frames per second, 240, whatever. Well, maybe not 240. At least not until they're doing a 4090 at 1080p or whatever. But this is absolute garbage that they are requiring ray tracing. It is a performance killer across the board, and they are requiring something that should never be anything but optional. It's fine if people want the ray tracing, but it should not be required. Not in any way, shape, or form. Then on top of that, if you look at the full ray tracing requirements, and this is path tracing, which is like the super advanced version of ray tracing, that's with upscaling. You have to have upscaling in addition to having these high-end graphics cards. And you have to use performance mode in order to get... actually, let's look at this. So, let me look at that again. So, the full ray tracing minimum requires DLSS 3 with frame generation and the preset quality. And that is for 1080p with 60 with full ray tracing. Then it's basically the same thing for the recommended, which is the balanced preset. Once again, still using DLSS 3 with frame generation. And the one thing I guess the one thing I can say that's at least better about this is DLSS is better than FSR, but that's still not good enough because there's no reason. I mean, frame generation, obviously the only reason why they're requiring frame generation is because they want to use path tracing, and path tracing is, I mean, if ray tracing is a system killer, path tracing is like murdering a system, using paddles to bring it back to life, and then killing it again, then bringing it back to life again, and killing it one more time. It is incredibly demanding, and that's obviously that's the only reason why they're doing the requirement of using DLSS and frame generation. But seriously, there shouldn't be ray tracing as a requirement. It's fine if you want to make it an option, let people have the best looking version of the game, but this is not only bad because of the fact that they're requiring something that some people just straight up don't want, like us, but furthermore because it is so poorly optimized that they are requiring these ridiculous specs. Now, if I was going to get it, which I've already decided I'm not going to, at least not until they get rid of the ray tracing, I could actually hit that 1080p 60 native with the ray tracing without too much difficulty. I have a card that's, both my GPUs is above that. My CPU is a little bit above that. Actually, no, I think it's about the same. It's about the same, give or take. My memory is literally 4 times that. So I have a ridiculous amount for that. The storage, 120 gigs is a lot, but there's games that are bigger than that. God of War Ragnarok is like 180 gigs. So, it's not as bad as that, but regardless, there is no excuse for this. There's no excuse for this. I will not be buying it mostly because they're forcing ray tracing on people. And because of what that does to performance, and the specification requirements are evidence of what it does to performance. Now, I know that fanboys are going to say, oh, well, my Xbox and my PS5 and the PS5 can do the ray tracing. It's like, okay, well, the ray tracing you're getting on those systems is not the same. You're upscaling in order to get that resolution. So it's not even close to the same thing at all. It's probably going to be rendering, I'm going to say, at best, at like 800p to get up to 4K. It's going to be rendering at 800p and upscaling to 4K. And it'll still look good, but anyway. It's just garbage. This is such garbage, and I'm just going to keep repeating myself. So go ahead, your thoughts.
Okay, so you actually are more forgiving than me on several aspects, just because, for the first thing I heard when I saw there was 120 gigabyte, requirements, I was just like, are you insane? Like, what's with these games? Like, Call of Duty was supposed to be 100 plus gigs, and I wasn't aware that God of War Ragnarok was 180. I feel like I still haven't touched these types of games that have those requirements, because the largest game that I can think of that I've ever installed was probably maybe around 80, and even then I'm just like livid at this, at how much space is being required. So I guess it's not as bad, but I still just I wish games were, I wish the games were smaller enough. Considering the fact that back in the 90s they made games that were like Doom, and they put in like, I don't know, like 16 kilobytes, and then you've got these games that are just like, yeah, we're just like, take all the space we can use. So I'm like, whatever happened to optimization? You've got Nintendo of all people, even though if the games aren't that graphically impressive, they're able to take like I think they were able to get Breath of the Wild onto, what was it, like, it was no more than 16 gigabytes of storage for a cartridge. So, they're able to do all that and optimize their games to fit, but you guys can't, optimize the storage for your games. Like, what's going on here? But yeah, and it's really disappointing, because as you said, I think for the most part, outside of the GPU requirements, everything is pretty reasonable, I would say. The Intel requirements, the AMD requirements, like those I think are pretty reasonable. And in fact, I'm kind of, in a sense, kind of surprised, that those kinds of CPUs are still able to do this type of stuff. But as you said, ray tracing should not be a requirement. It should be an option, because that's really the thing that's killing everything here. And the fact is that like, without ray tracing, you cannot play these games. So if you have an older NVIDIA card, if you have anything before the RTX line, so if you got like a GTX 1060, not 1060, a 1660, or something like that, or if you have a 1080 Ti, even those are cards that could still play stuff today, you can't play anything on them because of the fact that they don't have tensor cores or support ray tracing, which is ridiculous, because there still is some life in them even all these years later. And you might say, oh, well, that's just the way of the times. You gotta get some new stuff. You can't play on the old hardware forever. That's true. But at the same time, locking everything away because of one aspect of a setting is ridiculous. Like, imagine if older games, back when games had this, like, imagine if you couldn't play any sort type of the older games that had what was it, NVIDIA physics or something like that. Imagine if you couldn't play any games because you didn't have a card that supported physics, even though that was an optional thing that would only be disabled, was automatically disabled if you didn't have a card that supported it. But if you did, then you would have that option. That's what ray tracing should be, is an option that's disabled. But if you have the card that can do those types of things, then it's enabled and you can select it. So, like, this is completely ridiculous. And I mean, also, as you said, like, AMD is not great with ray tracing. Like, that's something that they're massively behind in that aspect. I mean, as far as restoration goes, AMD is doing a pretty good job. Not the greatest. I mean, they're still falling behind NVIDIA in that aspect, but for the most part, rasterization is something that where AMD really shines. So the fact that if you have an AMD card that is older than, I think it was like the 6000 series cards, then you really can't play it, which is kind of funny because or at least the computer I'm using for gaming right now, it meets all of the requirements except for the GPU because it's an RX 5800 model, which, not 5800, 580. So, which is an older card, and it does not support ray tracing at all. So, I couldn't play this game at all. And I mean, I have a 3080 Ti, but like, I'm not gonna pop that into this PC just for that, and also like my power supply would be able to handle it at right now, so that has to go into the separate PC that I'm gonna be building. But the fact is, like, no one should have to buy a newer graphics card just for that. I mean, considering the fact, I mean, some people like to buy something that lasts a long time because they're like, they have the hardware. They said, I'm satisfied with what I have. It gets me the performance I want. It's something that I know lasts for a while, and something, say someone bought or made a PC some X number of years ago, and what they bought was, pretty standard stuff for the time, and maybe even high end at the time. Like, again, if you bought, say, a 10, well, I mean, that's still like some broad way, but say you bought a card right before the generation before they had, tensor cores and ray tracing and stuff like that, and all that type of stuff. If you were just a generation behind and you had a PC that does everything you need or wanted it to do, and all of a sudden the games say, you're required to have these special types of chips in your GPU, otherwise you can't play the game. Like, it's ridiculous. And in a sense, it almost kind of creates e-waste, because it's like, well, now I gotta like get rid of this stuff so I can get something else. Like, I find it completely ridiculous that stuff like that can happen. So I like you, I definitely will not be buying this game. And even it, later down the line, when I build my new PC and have that type of capability, it's not still a game that I wouldn't buy just because I do not want to support having this type of mentality where we're going to force you into ray tracing whether you like it or not. Because you said it's a performance killer. And in the article that you sent me earlier, there's a part where it's mentioned about NVIDIA explaining full ray tracing is a demanding but highly accurate way to render light and its effects when it's seen, used by visual effects artists to create film and TV graphics that are indistinguishable from reality. Well, who said I wanted to have reality in my video game? Sure, I would, having a game with some pretty nice textures and graphics would be great, but if it's at the cost of me having a subpar experience as far as the gameplay goes, I don't want it. Get rid of that. It's garbage to me. I don't want anything to have to do with that. So I really hate the fact that we have these, we have this, I guess, standard of having lifelike realism pushed into our games when we don't want it because of the impact that it has on our performance. So I definitely am against this completely, and I really hope that there is a huge fuss made about this upon the release on the PC end of things.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm not going to repeat myself much more. But until they make ray tracing no longer required, I will not buy this game, because even though I have a PC that could do what I would want to do, 1080p 60 minimum, potentially higher because I do have higher specs in a variety of areas, I'm just not okay with them forcing us to do ray tracing. I do not want ray tracing in my game, not when it is such a performance killer. Now, when I was talking about FSR versus DLSS, I wasn't specifically referring to ray tracing. I was just talking about the upscaling in general, because FSR is garbage upscaling, and DLSS is actually pretty good. I tried it out a couple times in games just to, improve performance, even without the frame gen. And I don't like that at all. I'd much rather just have native, and if necessary, turn down some settings. I mean, I think DLSS is a lot better than FSR, like significantly better. But I still I prefer not using it if I don't have to. Now, I will say, if DLSS was an option on the Steam Deck, I would probably use it for games that struggle on performance, because DLSS does work well enough to where I don't think it would be detrimental to the experience. Whereas with FSR, it really is, and it basically doesn't really do anything to performance. It doesn't improve performance, it just makes the games look worse. And it's like, okay, so I'm rendering at lower resolution, I'm gaining maybe 2 frames occasionally, not even all the time. This isn't worth it at all. So, anyway. That's all I got. Anything else from you?
No, sir.
All right, so the PlayStation 30th anniversary has come, and is technically, well, it's not over, but December 3rd was the 30th anniversary, and Sony did release something. We don't know if this is the only thing, but it might very well be. There was no showcase. What they did do, though, is they released a bunch of themes for the PlayStation 5 that allow you to have, and I will note this is a temporary thing, it's not going to be available for super long. I think that you can download the themes and then you should be able to use them in perpetuity, but I'm not positive on that front. That part's a little unclear to me. Let me just bring up the article here. So, this is from Video Games Chronicle. For a limited time, players can change parts of PS5's design based on past console generations. And let's see here. So you can customize not only the startup to match that of either the PS1, PS2, PS3, or PS4, but you can also do various themes based on the old systems. You can change stuff with the audio, like how it, like sounds it makes for moving around the operating system and all that, and just have themes in general based on those systems. So that's about it in terms of what they did. I certainly have some thoughts as someone who has been a PlayStation fan, not fanboy, since the original PlayStation up through the PS4. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit disappointing that we didn't get more from the announcement, but I mean, I think this is a pretty cool thing, getting these new custom themes and being able to change some of the design. The biggest problem I have with this, though, is the fact that it's a limited time thing. Even if it's something that you can keep, I think something like this is something that shouldn't be just a one-time thing and then it's gone. I mean, sure, you might say, well, it's just to celebrate the 30th anniversary, but people would really like this thing. And say someone bought a PS5 a month or so down the line, they wouldn't be able to get this. They wouldn't be able to download these types of themes because they're gone, because it was a limited time thing. I mean, consider the fact that this is just, I mean, it's not, I mean, I guess you couldn't really say it's standard stuff, but consider the fact that it's really just a, they're just themes for the original PlayStation consoles. I feel like this is something that should be kind of a standard thing. Like, I feel like people who wanted to want to customize their PS5 menus and stuff would like having something like this. You know, if they, you know, say this was available from the start, from the launch of the PS5, I feel like people who bought one and saw this was there would go ahead and set up their PS5s because they thought, hey, I really like this console, this older PS console. I would like to have the layout the same way. So I really think it sucks that Sony's only having this as a limited time thing, and I hope that they reconsider and say, we changed our mind, we're gonna make this a permanent thing, so that way people will all be able to experience this, whether you're a new time PlayStation owner or someone who was around longer and had a PS5 at the time. We want you to be able to experience the same thing and enjoy the legacy of the PlayStation brand. So that's my problem with that on that end. Now, I don't really have too much to say about about I guess the layout, except I will say that I know I would automatically choose the PS2 layout because I sort of grew up around the PS2, so always hearing the sound of it booting up at launch, and also just, you know, seeing how it looks on the TV, you know, that's sort of etched into my memory. So I would automatically choose the PS2 hands down all day, every day. Even if they're occasionally, I remember seeing the error reader and, you know, seeing how intense that was. I still would just choose that. Now, I vaguely remember the PS1 boot ups splash screen. So yeah, okay, now it's coming back to me. But I mean, I don't really remember what happened with the PS3 and PS4, so I don't know how those layouts and stuff like that went. But I definitely would choose the PS2 because that was good. And honestly, I don't know. I kind of feel like the PS2 and the GameCube did startups the best. And I think also their menus as well as their creativity. And I also think that partially had to do with memory cards back in the day because, you know, you also had kind of like special icons with your PS2 saves and your GameCube saves. Like, those were good. I like those. Those, even though stuff is, you know, just saved on a storage drive these days, you know, I feel like they should still kind of bring that back. But yeah, that's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say about that.
Well, I can already say that my memory card memories, I mean, apart from, you know, the icons, which I agree, those were cool for the different save files, I'm traumatized by memory cards because of, like, at least twice, probably 3 times with Final Fantasy VIII where my data corrupted when I was on disc 3. And I didn't have any extra saves.
Oh.
I mean, I learned my lesson after that, but it took me a little bit to fully learn it because I didn't expect it would happen multiple times. Yeah. But either way, yeah, like, for me, I would say, like, I would like to have the PS1 startup sound, even though I love the PS3 one as well. PS2, honestly, I barely remember it, mostly because I got the PS2 really late, and really the only games I played on it were Kingdom Hearts and some of the Final Fantasy titles. I mean, like, I touched on a couple other things, but it was basically just like Final Fantasy X and 12 and Dirge of Cerberus. I think that was about it, other than Kingdom Hearts 2. Yeah. I mean, like, looking at my PS2 library, I briefly tried, like, Dark Cloud, but I couldn't get into it. And I tried the Lord of the Rings games, and I couldn't get into those either. But otherwise, PS2, I have fewer memories with that, where I have a lot of memories with PS1 and PS3, definitely. So, I mean, I still use my PS3 almost daily, but it's basically just my Blu-ray player, Blu-ray DVD player, more than anything else. So, but yeah, like I would love to have the boot up sound for the original PS1, and then have the cross media bar from PS3, because that is, I still think it's probably my favorite UI that they've done. I still think it's great. I really, really like it. I mean, the one for PS5, like, obviously I don't have a PS5, but I've seen it and it looks nice. Like, it looks really sleek and everything. I like the design. PS4, I liked it, but it was just very slow. And, I don't know. I think it's probably, I have the most memories of PS1 and PS3 because those are the ones I played the most, other than, I mean, PS4, I certainly have the memories because I played that a lot as well, but that one's something that I don't think about nearly as much. Anyway, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I like the idea of these themes and startup sounds and everything like that. I'm hoping that it is, in fact, something that, at least when you have it, it will remain permanent. But the big problem that I see happening with this, and it's guaranteed it's going to happen, is that if this is a limited time thing, you are going to have scalpers selling PS5s with those themes on them after it goes away.
That's right.
And people will buy it. So that's definitely a downside. It basically just kind of feels like what Nintendo did with the Mario 3D All-Stars collection, where they had it for a very limited time. Now, granted, that one was around quite a while after it went out of print. People still had an opportunity to get it for quite a while. And while I totally understand people's, issues with it, obviously the fact that both Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine were only 30 frames per second when they really should have been 60, I still was really glad I got that collection, because that was the first time that I really played those games. I mean, 64 I played a little bit, but I'd never gotten very far into it. And Sunshine I had played like maybe, I don't know, a couple of hours when I first got my GameCube, which was late as well, and that was about it. And then, but when I got this collection, I played through all three games and 100%ed all three, and I had never played Galaxy before that at all, so it was a perfect port for the Switch. Galaxy at least was 60 frames per second, and it controlled great with the gyro. So much better, I think, than the Wii Remote in that case, and the game was stellar. I mean, I liked all three of them. I know I'm in the extreme minority, but I loved Sunshine. I felt like it controlled so much better in many ways than 64. Or at least, there was just enough quality of life improvements. Yeah, you lost some of the jumps that you get from 64, but then you have other ways to move around that make it a little better. And I know I'm going way off topic, but we're in the 30th anniversary territory, and that's what was going on with. Actually, no, I guess that was the 35th anniversary for Mario. But anyway, that being said, I hope that Sony makes this a permanent thing and not just a temporary thing. But at minimum, they at least make it possible for people who get these themes to actually keep them, and not be like, oh, you can use them for like a week and then they're gone. It's like, well, that was pointless. I mean, I can't imagine they would do something that stupid, but who knows? So, yeah. Anyway. The only other thing I have to say about that is I hope that they do something further for the 30th anniversary, and they still could. I mean, technically it's only been a day since the 30th anniversary, the official 30th anniversary, and for something this big, it seems like they have to do more, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. I don't think we're going to get a showcase, though. I think that was wishful thinking, and that this is probably it. It's probably just these themes, which are cool, but Eh, not really
Well,
enough.
let me run a question by you.
Mhm.
Do you think Sony could possibly be not using it, making a showcase, but could be saving something for the Game Awards?
Oh, I'm sure there'll be something in the Game Awards. I just don't know if it'll be anything like for the 30th anniversary specifically. I think it'll
Okay.
just be, general stuff. I mean, I'm hoping there's something. Definitely planning to watch that, and I guess that'll be a Thursday, so we'll see if streaming is an option. I don't know if it's going to be with editing the podcast, but we'll see how that goes. All right. Any more thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
All right. Do you want to talk about these Switch 2 accessories?
Yeah. So, over on Alibaba, there supposedly are Switch 2 accessories that are being sold online from vendors. Now, Alibaba, as you know, is one of the sort of, I guess you could say, Chinese online retailers, kind of like Wish or what's the other one, Temu or something like that. So it's kind of like that. And they've been selling stuff for a while, but now they've been recently have been seen selling tempered glass accessories and a case for the Switch 2. Now, we haven't heard anything out officially about the Switch, and nothing has been, shown outside. So, how if these are really, sort of official, or whether these will fit with the actual Switch 2, is unknown. However, it says that one source in an article from Video Game Chronicles, it stated that one source who had not seen the final Switch 2 console but had been briefed on Nintendo's plans told VGC that the pictures matched what the company had told partners to expect from its design. So these could be guesses about what the Switch 2 could be like, but based on what's being said, it could be possible that this is something that a third party who had been like some party that was licensed to make these designs could have leaked these leaked the designs to other parties, and these parties are starting to make their own sort of third party accessories. So your thoughts on this?
Well, the first thing I'm thinking of is you remember a number of months ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, we had talked about that story where apparently Nintendo was just wasn't letting manufacturers actually like see the Switch, but they were letting them stick their hand in the box and feel around to kind of get an idea of what to expect. I could see it being that that's what they're doing, and that basically they're just kind of guesstimating, and that like most things, like the memes go about things that you buy from Wish or things that you buy from Temu, that they're not quite gonna fit right, and so it's just gonna be like it's a gamble whether or not you get something that's actually any good or useful. Yeah, so that's really what it comes down to for me, is that well, it's totally possible they have actual measurements and they have all the information they need, officially from Nintendo, to where they can design these accessories. At the same time, I also just kind of remain skeptical because of things like this site where you have these basically garbage products that are completely fake, don't actually work properly, they don't fit properly, and so on and so forth. Yeah, actually almost wouldn't even surprise me if this is not actually for the Switch 2, it's for the Snitch 2 or something. They're off-brand handheld. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. Like, I want Nintendo to reveal this freaking system soon. I just want to see it. I want to see what it's going to be like. I mean, I'm sure that the rumors we've gotten are all true, but I still want to actually see it. I want to see it. I want to see what it is that they're planning to do with it. I want to get an idea of what this thing is like in action. You know, what kind of hardware capabilities is going to have? Is it going to match the Steam Deck? Probably not. You know, but of course, it'll have probably the upscaling with NVIDIA working with them. There's probably going to be like some custom version of DLSS that they could use. I mean, there's just a lot of curiosity. I'm just really curious about it from a tech perspective. It's really interesting to me. And, you know, whether or not this would be something that would actually be worth getting close to launch. Obviously, my big holdup, more than anything else, is the lack of an OLED screen. But who knows? Maybe Nintendo could sell me on it. I want to see what they got. But yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I wouldn't put, at least as far as purchasing something like this, I would not buy anything from Alibaba or any site because you're not guaranteed what you actually buy. I mean, there are people who, for whatever reason, think they can purchase an RTX 4090 for $500, and then it turns out what they're actually getting is something like a GT 1030, which is actually reading as a, which if you put it through like some spec thing like CPU ID, it says it's a 4090, but then you see it's only got like, you know, 2 gigabytes of VRAM. It's using GDDR3 or something. It's like, yeah, no, don't buy something like that. But even still, I mean, why would you purchase accessories for something you don't know if it'll actually completely work or not with it? I mean, I wouldn't buy accessories for something I haven't even seen. I mean, like you said, they could, if it's something like they were feeling around and trying to, you know, make estimations about what it's like, that even then, I still wouldn't buy any accessories because they don't completely know. They haven't been able to hold it in their hands and look at it and directly measure it. They're just able to guess what they think. Well, it feels like it's X amount of inches. It feels like, you know, the screen's this big. It feels like the overall device is roughly this size. It feels like the Joy-Cons attach this way to the main device. It feels like it, but that doesn't mean it is that way though. So I definitely like you said, I wouldn't recommend buying any accessories right now, because even if it's from a legitimate company, like if you said from I think it's PDP who makes accessories, you know, they're a reputable source and they're licensed. But even then, if they were selling accessories, I would not buy them now because we don't know what the Switch looks like and we don't know who has actually held or seen the Switch. So wait until it's revealed and shown and people actually know what it looks like, then I would say go ahead and buy accessories, because otherwise you're going to be spending, I mean, if it's from Alibaba, you're probably spending $5, but then you're also paying shipping and stuff, but you're going to be spending at least $10 on something, and you might have just like a paperweight, and you might have something which you'll regret buying later on. So yeah, just don't buy anything right now. And of course, as you said, Nintendo just show what it is, like raw way. Even if you say the launch date is a little further than we would like, at least if people know what it is and also have an idea about the price, that would, you know, help people prepare ahead of time instead of just being, boom, hey guys, we've got the Switch here, dropping out tomorrow, bye. Yeah, so that's all I gotta say.
All right. Well, I think that is it then. So let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right, so my recommendations now, actually, make sure I have this correct here. Okay, so I have this correct here. So last year, I sort of, for the month of December, had sort of Christmas themed recommendations. So I'm going to start off with one of them saying, my recommendation is the movie Gremlins. It is a Steven Spielberg film, and it's an 80s film. And it's about this guy who gets a gift from his father on Christmas Eve. The father buys it from Chinatown. It's a pet that's called a Mogwai, and there are certain rules that go with owning a Mogwai. And you know, throughout the course of the film, early on, those rules are broken, and as a result, all types of havoc ensues. And so it's definitely a funny movie. It's definitely, it's kind of like, I guess you could say, a black comedy type of film, but it's definitely a good film. So I definitely recommend watching that.
So if it's a black comedy, does that mean Eddie Murphy's in it?
Yes, he's got a nice cameo. He just passes by. I mean, some people might think it's just someone's shadow, but no, it was actually just Eddie Murphy.
All right. Well, I actually also have a Christmas-themed recommendation, and that is the movie Fat Man. And I'm pretty sure I recommended this last year as well, but it's Mel Gibson playing Saint Nicholas, or well, let's hear. Kris Kringle is what his name is, and basically he gives coal to this horrible kid. And the kid, this is like a spoiled rich kid who's just horrible. And he pays a hitman to track down Santa and kill him. And so that is essentially the premise of the movie. And of course you have Mel Gibson, former, action star, playing Kris Kringle, and it's just a really great movie. Like, it's not campy. It's just good. It's just really well done. The writing is great. The characters feel like real people. And Kris Kringle, Chris's relationship with his wife. It's a mixed marriage. His wife is black, and how they represent the elves and stuff is fantastic as well. And it's just like their relationship, though, him and his wife, it's a very realistic relationship. Like, it feels like a real marriage. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but it's really, really good. And just everything about this movie is so good. So good. So I definitely highly recommend it. It's become one of our favorites. Which is funny because my wife is not usually into rated R movies. There's only a handful of them that she really likes, but she's told me this has become one of her favorites. So that's the one we watched last week, and this week we'll continue with our traditions on that front. But additionally, I'm going to recommend, related to Dark Souls 3, really any Souls game. If you find yourself struggling with a certain boss and you just can't move forward, and you aren't required to do that boss right away, and you have the option to go back and do other stuff, go off and do other stuff. Go to areas where you might have missed some stuff. If there's another boss you could fight, go do that instead. Just get away for a little bit and then come back, and hopefully you'll have the success you want. So, and then one last thing with Dark Souls 3 is with the Dancer, cheese the crap out of that boss fight if you can't get through it normally, because it's not hard to cheese and it's worth cheesing, because that boss fight sucks. So, okay, that's what I got for recommendations. Dissuasions.
So my dissuasion is going to be, do not rent any PCs from NZXT. Recently, it's come out from Gamers Nexus that after going through ordering one from them anonymously, is that NZXT's business practices with their renting system is horrible. They mislead people as far as how the prices of PCs they sell, the specs do not match the PCs that they're renting out. So you see the title and think it's the same PC, but they're actually renting something with lower specs. Additionally, they have been raising the prices or have been shifting the prices around. So while you might think you're paying one price, you're actually paying a slightly higher price. Additionally, some people might believe that this is a rent-to-own program. it's not. You still have to return the PC after a set amount, or I don't remember what the time frame is, but you don't own the PC. You still have to actually return it once you stop paying it. And additionally, there are hidden fees that have been brought out that have been discovered about that as well. So do not rent any PCs from NZXT, and I would probably even say just don't buy PCs from them because of the fact that they're doing a whole lot of shady stuff as far as their business practices go. So yeah, that's my dissuasion.
All right. Well, I have some Thanksgiving-related dissuasions based on the mistakes that I made. First of all, do not rely solely on probe thermometers when smoking a turkey. Make full use of it. If you are buying, most frozen turkeys that you buy will have like a little popper thing that's in the turkey breast, that when it pops out, that tells you that it's done. Utilize that, rely on that primarily. If you can still use the probe thermometers, just realize that unless you get it in just the right spot, it may give you an inaccurate reading, and that little popper thing that's there is your friend. That's going to give you the most accurate reading. So that's what you should be relying on. Secondly, if you are wanting to mash potatoes, do not try to mash them when they're cold. Make sure, even if you cook them ahead of when you're actually going to be mashing them, mash them when they're warm, because whether you're using a potato rice or like I was or otherwise, you're going to get a much better result if you actually take the time. If you do it when they're warm already, even if you have to just warm them back up again a little bit. And then finally, if you are trying to make something like a cream of mushroom soup, as I did, do not use a blender or a food processor to chop up the mushrooms, because you're not going to get the texture you're looking for if you want something that's similar but with better ingredients to like the Campbell's and other condensed soups that you typically buy. So that is what I have for that.
Very good, very good, very good. I'll definitely make note of that.
All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Nothing from this past week. There are a couple videos that I might get around to this week. I'll see what happens with that. However, I'm still working out finalizing the exact time, but what I have planned right now is on the 20th of this month, I want to do sort of like my new custom, and that is to live stream Batman Arkham Origins. And my usual thing is just to go through the game as long as I can without dying, and then once I'm dead, the stream is over. So I don't know what time it is. I'll start earlier this year because I know that I started kind of later last year and I lived longer than I thought, and so it was like later, and I got really tired and was not able to focus as much. So I might see if I start earlier in the evening and do that, but I'll have more details for that later on.
All right, good stuff. Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at the Frozen Gamer 87. They're basically just been putting up clips from the podcast each week. I need to do more cover art. I just didn't have as much time, or rather, I should put it this way. This past weekend, I needed to take the weekend off because I had been doing way too much before that, and I needed to take the time off. So I have not gotten the thumbnails done for those videos from last week, and I will probably have to try to get those and the ones for this week done this week. So, but otherwise, I am planning to get the recordings done for the Red Dead Redemption comparison between the Switch OLED and the Steam Deck OLED. It's just a matter of finding the time to do it. I'm hoping I'll have some time to work on that this Saturday. You can also find me on my YouTube cooking channel not authentic but delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. And there we just put out a recipe for Thanksgiving leftovers pizza, which we made this past Friday, and oh man, it was so good. It was so good. Now, I probably overdid the gravy a little bit. I probably should have done a little bit less because it was the crust was a little, well, I shouldn't say the crust wasn't really wet, but it was dripping a bit more than I wanted it to. Either should have done less gravy or put the stuffing under the cheese so that it absorbs some of the gravy, would have been good too. Either way, absolutely worth making. You have gravy for the sauce, then you have turkey, mozzarella cheese, turkey stuffing. You can use cornbread stuffing too if you prefer that, jalapenos, and cranberry sauce. And it was really, really good. Like, I will make that again for sure. I just don't know exactly when. It'll probably be next year, but who knows? Maybe there will be some time in the next couple months that it's just like, we're interested in that. We still have some turkey stuffing. We could just do chicken instead of turkey and make up some quick, gravy, and bada bing, bada boom, we're good to go. But anyway, yeah, it's super good, super good. So, okay. And then finally, there is the channel for the podcast. So that's youtube.com/@theorangeboxpodcast. There we put up the video version of this podcast every week, normally 7 a.m. Central Time on Friday. I've been having issues with getting the stuff published, like it's just not going up properly when it's exporting from Premiere, and so I've had some issues with getting that up right on time. But there you can of course see not only do you get all the content that you get from the audio only version, but you also get to see our beautiful faces and see clips from games we've been playing, as well as trailers for games we've been talking about, and so on and so forth. In addition to that, there's also the audio version of the podcast, which goes up every Friday, normally 12 a.m. Central Time. Once again, apart from the 1 week when I accidentally forgot to actually schedule it to go up. I had it uploaded, I just forgot to schedule it, so it didn't go up until a week later. But that is obviously the same thing as the video version, just minus the video. So either way, you get the discussion, you get the music, all that good stuff. And if you want to reach out to us, in addition to the option of just commenting on the video version of the podcast, you also can email us, theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com, or you can send us a tweet at theorangeboxpod. And, feel free to reach out if you so desire. And if you have no desire to reach out to us, it's perfectly fine, because we're going to talk for 2.5 hours every week, because this is how we catch up from week to week. So, yeah, I think that's everything. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zaracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, take a day to get some rest. Orange Box Podcast.